always have a broad horizon. Always try things that are outside of your comfort zone and maybe they don't have any immediate use. In my example, when I was in my previous career path, I only thought of cryptocurrencies as a hobby and I kept up with them just because of personal interest. And when my situation suddenly changed and all things seemed to be falling apart, it was precisely this hobby or this pastime I had that gave me a new path to a new career.
Our featured speaker today is a freelance crypto writer, blockchain and DLT enthusiast who believes decentralization is the future. As an economics graduate, he's very passionate about the potential that cryptocurrencies have for developing nations. So, Sebastian, it's such a pleasure to have you as our featured guest today. Thank you so much for being willing to share your journey with us.
Thanks for having me. Basically, to start, I would like to describe how I got into crypto. Prior to 2019, that's when I started writing professionally about crypto. I was always interested by the space, but I had a very regular professional track record. I was, working either for the private sector or for the government, and had a pretty normal life. I actually in 2018 I started a podcast called History of South America, and it was kind of doing well, but I got an offer for a much better job that actually would pay me closely to 3 times what I was making in my job then. So I had to, leave the podcast because the other job was more demanding. And, that was basically my life prior to 2019. And in 2019, things changed radically. My country, Bolivia, had an election, but there were some electoral problems and kind of like a soft coup, and that sort of killed the job market during that year. And I was working by the government at that moment, so I obviously got fired. Luckily, I was not very important, so I did not get any trials or anything legally problematic, but I was out of a job. After the electoral problems and coup, the pandemic came. So that killed the private sector, and the public sector would not hire me because I was working for the house to the government previously. So for like a couple months in January 2020, December 2019, I was in a crisis, like, how am I going to support myself? There are no jobs. No one's going to hire me. I was considering going back to Argentina. I studied in Argentina. But, Argentina was also in a terrible economic situation. So I did not think that I was going to get anywhere there. So while I was looking for options online and how I was going to pull myself out of this hole, I remembered I was like crypto. I was interested by it. So I decided that, I'm not a developer. I study economics. So maybe there is something I can do. And through reading blogs and talking to people in the crypto community that I knew, they told me there is always need, there's always room for people who want to write about crypto because it's still a very niche subject. So people need someone to explain it to them, talk to about it and write about it. So I started writing first for free for a blog that was called CoinMonks. I started writing for free for them, and through them I got acquainted with a few paid jobs, and after a while I started building a portfolio of articles, and with that I started applying to different freelance positions, different shorter contracts. And from there I started shifting my entire career to the crypto world because it was the only thing that at the moment I could find to pay for the bills. And after 6 months of that, I decided, okay, maybe I should get more into the technology, and I decided to go into a coding bootcamp for crypto developers. And I started that on November 2020. And it's been a year that I've been doing this. And it's been, great because precisely when the whole world collapsed, more or less, double for me because of the electoral problems and the pandemic, the only limelight or, thing to pull me out I could find was cryptocurrencies. And it's been quite interesting to see that what I previously thought was this just niche interest I had or this hobby became actually my only source of sustainment. And actually right now it's not only about survival because it's allowing me to expand my career considerably more than what I was previously doing. And that coding bootcamp I started doing, they actually approached me and told me that they want to hire me to give the first module of the coding bootcamp. That's pure theory. So I'm going to start doing that next week. And, it's been quite an interesting journey going from knowing nothing or being just a hobbyist in the crypto community to having my entire life revolve around it. And now I'm going to start teach new people about the basics of crypto. So that would be my journey so far.
Congratulations. That's so exciting. I'm glad that you're getting to use your newfound knowledge and passion in such a big way to help future students. I was actually wondering, what is it that really fascinated you first about crypto versus, I understand, I think the evolution in your career. Why do you think it's this that has such an ability to shape the future?
Yeah, I think that comes from actually studying in Argentina. So I went to Argentina to go to university in 2009. And in 2009, despite that the economic crisis had happened the year prior, the South America was very good because, the stimulus measures that China took and the United States actually increased the price of commodities. So there was no crisis in South America at that point. I went to Argentina that had a very stable economy. I mean, you could go to any big change that existed in Europe or in the United States, and it was in Argentina. You could find any product you wanted, and everything was seemingly going excellent in that country. And as I progressed in my studies, the economic situation began to deteriorate more and more. When you're studying economics and you are perhaps in a first world situation, and you read about inflation or you read about how purchasing power is different than nominal money and all those things, all that seems theoretical to you because your economic situation is basically taken care of. But as I was in Argentina, I was learning about this stuff. I could see it out there in the market. I could experience it, and it was not fun. Maybe it was interesting but not fun. I could see my landlord would adjust my rent every month, and I could go to the store and I could see that the prices would change sometimes every 2 weeks. I had to track my expenses, and I had to see what I was buying first. I always have chocolate milk for breakfast. And when I started, chocolate milk was three Argentinian pesos. And when I left, it was 21.50. So I always had to track all those stuff in order to watch my expenses and that kind of stuff. And what really brought me into crypto is when the inflation got really bad in Argentina, they started to put capital controls on dollars, so you could not purchase dollars. And the dollars I would get from my family to pay for my studies would automatically exchange themselves to the official government exchange rate, which was much lower than they would call it the black market, but it was actually the real exchange rate. So I had to research alternatives to banking, and that's how I came to cryptocurrencies first, in 2012, 2013. And obviously at that time it was not workable to receive money in Bitcoin because it would be virtually useless in Argentina. But I always kept, researching, learning, and in 2014, 2015, the first stablecoin came out. That's Tether. That's a crypto token that's always 1-on-1 exchange rate with the US dollar. And actually, after I was, almost finished with university, I started working in Argentina. I would get my salary and I would save it in Tether to protect it from inflation. And that's how I first started using little by little cryptocurrencies.
That's awesome to hear. I really, really like hearing about you going through this experience and actually having a direct and clear use for cryptocurrencies. It's definitely something that, from my perspective, I think there's a huge amount of potential for it. And I think there's a lot of value that cryptocurrencies can bring to the world, but I don't see it in my day-to-day life. And hearing about you seeing it in yours is very interesting and quite well links into what I wanted to ask you about next. I was hoping to see your perspective in regards to developing nations, how cryptocurrencies can help them, not just obviously the individuals, but also the nations to sort of grow and give them some better potential. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, again, going back to the banking situation, if you're living in Europe, United States, or the more developed parts of Asia, the banking system caters to the individual very well, right? So you can buy stocks, you can use very different types of banking accounts that would give you higher savings yields depending on, some factors. You have investment vehicles, you have all of these things that can help you protect your money, but that's not present in the developing world. And trying to catch up to the developed world using the same technology they use would take too much time and would be far too expensive. And is arguably impossible for smaller countries like Bolivia, Paraguay, that do not have like such a huge domestic market that could support all these complex financial vehicles. Crypto technology, blockchain, cryptocurrencies would allow nations like mine to do is leapfrog the technology gap between us and the developed world and create similar or even superior financial products for the local populations that would not rely on the same technology path and will actually shorten the time to create these things. That's like the positive side, but then the negative side is like cryptocurrencies, at least in the sense of the public networks like Ethereum, Cardano, Tesos, or that kind of stuff, are outside of the control of any central authority, right? That's the main appeal, but also that's what most governments find threatening, because once they would start developing or encouraging people for using those products, they will lose control of the internal finances of the economy, right? Because they wouldn't have the ability to just control the money supply or prevent people from buying dollars like they're doing now in Argentina or Venezuela. That would limit the ability for the government to maneuver or regulate certain aspects of economic life. And instead of embracing this technology, I would say most of the governments in the region are actually trying to fight it, trying to limit it, trying to even completely destroy it. That's creating a lot of tension because of the economic situation right now in most countries of the region. A lot of people are turning to cryptocurrencies in order to protect their money, but the government doesn't want this because it's taking liquidity away from the domestic economy. So there is a lot of tension, especially, well, I don't know especially, but in Argentina, I know about this because my friends from university tell me that a few years ago, you could go to exchange house and, you see the exchange rate between the peso and the US dollar. And below you would see the exchange rate between the peso and USDT, peso and DAI. And you could publicly see how cryptocurrencies want to penetrate in the market. But now all that has been outlawed or banned. You're not able to freely access these products as before. And there is an increased push in order to try to actually completely ban them in most countries.
Well, there are several powerful points there, but kind of building off of some of the differences in how this is affecting different parts of the world. I'm going to be honest, one of my concerns has been like that there's a risk factor for those who have much less to invest and a lot to lose. So I guess making this sort of like a combination question, do you think there's a way to set those individuals up for success? And or is there a set of criteria newcomers to crypto can use in deciding where they should invest first?
Yeah, I mean, if you think of a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin or Ether, their price varies a lot, right? They're very unstable and they would not be a good vehicle for savings or trying to protect your purchasing power. But I think this is precisely where the stablecoin, the concept of a crypto asset that either tracks the value of a nation's currency like the dollar or the euro, is actually incredibly powerful in the developing world, because these cryptocurrencies are not affected by the same variations that regular cryptocurrencies have, and they keep a normal stable value across longer spans of time. So if you are like a person that is not looking to invest or trade in cryptocurrencies, but what you want is a stable asset to save and to protect yourself for future shocks, that they are actually the perfect technology, because they are anchored in a much bigger market, the crypto economy. So they are not gonna be subjected to the same pressures like the national currencies of South America are. So they won't be affected by the inflation that we are currently experiencing in most of the region, and they would actually protect the people from these effects. So I would say, stablecoins are precisely that product that would fit for people that are not looking to get rich. They are not moon boys. What they want is to protect their savings, yet they use it. And I would say like the most impressive value they offer is that right now, savings accounts across South America are ridiculous. Like, you're getting less than 1% per year, and you're actually losing money to inflation if you're trying to save using these types of banking accounts. But if I exchange my money for a stable coin and I go to Binance or some other crypto exchange that offers savings accounts, I can get 4%, 5% yield, and that's enough to create like a savings nest or account that is going to work the same as the traditional banking system does, but it's going to give you a much higher yield, and it's going to protect your purchasing power, and it's actually going to give you peace of mind, something that at the present moment, the financial markets and the economies of South America are not being able to deliver.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for sharing that. Andrew had a question as well. He was wanting to ask a little bit about NFTs. So, Sebastian, can you share more about how beginners might be able to get into NFTs, learn, implement, etc. for art? He continues by saying he agrees with the good point regarding savings versus investing. Any recommendations and advice for this new generation of savings? We see the same issues here of many people still saving versus investing.
Right, yeah. I mean, NFTs are a close subject to my heart because actually I am very involved in the Cardano ecosystem. And there is this project that's called Catalyst Fund, where you can make proposals to the community. The community reviews it, gives you feedback, and after that, there is a voting period where your project get either funding or it doesn't get funding. And I proposed a project for Fund 6 as the current one that involves NFTs for content creation and distribution. And yeah, it's up there for consideration in Project Catalyst. So yeah, NFTs are actually one of the most interesting topics right now in cryptocurrencies. So like a brief introduction, NFT is a non-fungible token that if you look at the code, at the technology in itself, what it actually is a type of token that when it is introduced into the ledger, the distributed ledger of a blockchain network, it is recorded with a particular identifier, either a counter or an ID, that makes it unique, a unique entry on the ledger. Now, what that does is make sure that each entry of an NFT in a distributed ledger is unique. In itself, that's not much, right? So what do I care if I'm saving in an accounting book something and I'm making a little mark to make sure that that's the only one entry with that little mark? What people associate with NFTs is the artwork, but the artwork in itself is never part of the blockchain because the image, video, or whatever you want to associate with is far too bigger to save it directly into a blockchain. So when people say NFTs and they refer to digital art, is actually a very profound misunderstanding because the digital art in itself is never part of the NFT. It's only referenced in the entry. So what I'm trying to say is that NFTs are not only digital art, and digital art is not NFTs. So I would say that the first thing you need to understand is that it's not a direct correlation or relation. So NFTs for now are that, and I would say that the most interesting application for NFTs is in the future when actually financial products can be better represented by them, because if you think something like a unique market position or like insurance claim or maybe even a structured loan, all of these are unique and you cannot represent them purely as fungible assets like most cryptocurrencies are at the moment. They would be better served being represented as some form of unique entry on a ledger, an NFT. So the future of NFT is actual as financial products and not digital art. Digital art was this very experimental phase that sort of captured the imagination of the public, but I would say this is going to phase out and it's going to be reduced as the usefulness of NFTs expands to other areas of the economy. Now, regarding savings and investing, yeah, I mean, that's an interesting dichotomy because most people outside looking into crypto, they see it as, this speculative bubble where people are just entering these different Ponzi schemes to want to get rich from each other's backs. But I would say that may be true for, again, the developed world where, the banking service caters so much to your needs that you actually need to take your money and put it in speculative vehicles if you want to, get higher yields. But here in the developing world, they're most useful as a way to protect your savings. So I would say to those who are starting, the best way to enter the crypto world is to just pick a product and try to experiment with it. And right now, the safest way you can enter is using stable coins and just researching the different ways you can get a decent yield for them, 5% a year, something like that. And you can see that the technology works. You can see that you're actually getting what you first started, and there is not going to be any like tricks, or there's not going to be any surprises in the future that are going to take that away from you. So I would say right now the safest bridge to enter into crypto is through the use of stable coins. And from there you can experiment if you want to go to like the more speculative or unstable cryptocurrencies or if you want to go to the NFT side.
Hi there. If you're enjoying this podcast, would you mind leaving us a review, a like, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform? Thanks so much. That really helps our reach. The Founders Voyage podcast is now proudly sponsored by VidOps. Kane at VidOps has been taking care of our editing since early 2024. He works efficiently, and I'm sure you'll agree that he does a great job. Thank you to VidOps for helping bring this podcast to life. If you want the same great support we're getting for your podcast, or you need help with video, photography, or animation, you can get 10% off at vidops.io using our referral code Voyage. That's vidops.io, referral code Voyage. Now back to the show.
That's actually a great transition into our next question is going to come from Brian. So I'm going to just pass over to him.
Only for a loop there. So just for full disclosure, I work for a major bank here in the United States. I'm also very much interested in DeFi and crypto in general, but just kind of looking at it from this perspective, I'm curious what your thoughts are on how stablecoins are backed. Some of them seem to be supported by actual currency holdings, meaning there's a room full of cash somewhere, whether it be US dollars or whatever. And there others are being backed by other cryptocurrency coins. What are your thoughts on both of those? Are there pros and cons to each of them? Is one of them more decentralized than another? And just kind of what are your thoughts on the different types and the safety, security, especially the stablecoin of each?
Right. So there are actually three models of stablecoins. The first one and the oldest one is that one that you mentioned, where you basically just have a bank account somewhere in a third-party financial institution, and people deposit dollars to that account, and they receive an equivalent amount of the stablecoin. And once they transact with a stablecoin, that stablecoin, wherever it goes, it's always going to be backed by some sort of deposit in this financial institution, right? So that was the first model, and it still is the most successful one because it's the easiest to understand, right? Essentially, what this type of cryptocurrencies are is like chips in a casino. You go to a casino, you take cash, you deposit it, and they give you chips back. You use the chips in the casino, and you go back and you get whatever amount of cash you can exchange the chips for. And although that's the most simplest form of a stablecoin, that's actually the riskiest, because even though that the transaction of the stablecoin is decentralized to the blockchain, the backing of that stablecoin is centralized in this third-party institution that you have no control over, right? I mean, they could take those deposits and invest in, Nigerian bonds, right? And lose everything. And suddenly you would see that cryptocurrency lose its entire value and you'll be like left out in the cold. So I would say that even though that was the first model, and perhaps that's the one that is most used even now, that's the most risky because the centralization is concentrated in the third-party financial institution that can do whatever with those funds. The second model is using a basket of other crypto tokens that are variable in price and using like a very complicated set of price metrics, try to pull those different tokens, different crypto assets to create a stable output. That would be the stable coin. And that stable coin, it's always pegged to real world currency. The most famous example of this is DAI. That's a stable coin in Ethereum. DAI is made of 18 different crypto tokens that what you do is, if you have one of these 18 assets, you deposit a certain amount of that asset in the smart contract of DAI, and DAI would give you back stable coins for that deposit. And that's a more interesting model because you're taking things that are by their nature unstable in price, and you're getting back a stable asset. But of course, the trade-off of that is that when you are depositing the unstable crypto asset into the DAI contract, it needs to be over-collateralized. So that means that you need to deposit a greater value into the contract than what you're going to get back. And the reason is to create this cushion in the price fluctuation that would allow DAI to remain stable and keep its stability vis-a-vis the dollar. So, of course, the question is, why would you give more money if you're going to get less? So the reason is that money you're giving is a loan. You are not going to lose it, and you're going to get back this stable asset that you can use in other investments. And once you are done with whatever use case you had for that a stable asset, you can recuperate it, go back to the contract of DAI, give back the equivalent amount, and you would get back your unstable tokens. So it's not like you're giving away the original asset forever. And the third model that is pioneered by Terra is that you use a pair of assets that are interlinked. In the case of Terra is UST, that's their stable coin, and Luna, that's their unstable coin. So what people do is they can buy Luna, the unstable asset, hold it, and if the demand for the stable asset is growing, they can exchange that Luna for the stable asset, get a greater amount in the exchange rate and profit from that. And when the reverse is happening, they can exchange their stable asset for the unstable asset in order to speculate with the unstable asset price in the future. So that kind of twin pair of assets related to each other is, I want to say, is far more probably simpler than the DAI model, because the DAI model relies on 18 different assets that are very complicated and their interactions are very difficult to track. Here you only have two assets, one unstable, one stable. But the problem with that is that the entire stability of the stable asset is dependent precisely on just one other asset that other asset is subject to price fluctuations. So I would say neither of the three are like perfect models. They are all very flawed and in some aspects, but they are all very interesting experimental ideas. And again, coming from a region that experiments high inflation regularly, the idea that you can take these very unstable original assets, combine them and try to achieve price stability using the different dynamics of their interactions is perhaps like, the solution for the problems of South America, that if, all the countries here could pull their national currencies into like a system like DAI, combine the different dynamics of their economies and try to get a stable asset that way, that would actually perhaps even solve the problems in South America. But, that takes a lot of political imagination and capital, and no one has it at the moment.
Thank you very much for that answer, definitely. I feel I don't know enough about stablecoins, but I am definitely very interested in them.
Shifting gears a little bit, I wanted to just read a comment and question from Carlos, because he doesn't have stable audio at the moment. He said, "Thank you so much, Sebastian. I wanted to share why cryptocurrencies make sense in Latin America, as for example, in Venezuela, our inflation rate by December 2021 is expected to be 1,500%. So in fact, to save money in banks feels like a real waste." And he's wondering, how can he tell signs of a scam versus something legitimate, because that's been an issue that's come up in his and other countries.
All right. So I would say the easiest way would be to see at the historical track of a project. If a project is very recent, I would say that you need to stay clear from it, because when crypto projects are very recent, that's where they are most unstable. And even if they are not a scam, they are completely honest, they can still fail and you can still lose your money. And it would be because of malicious intent. It would be because, it just failed. The first thing would be to, if you're trying to save money in crypto or use it to protect your purchasing power, is to only do it with crypto assets that have a very long record of working, like USDC or like USDT, or if you're not going to use a stable coin, if you're going to use a pure cryptocurrency, use a cryptocurrency from a network that's been around for a long time, like Bitcoin or Litecoin or Dashcoin or that kind of stuff. That would be my first answer. And the second answer would be to know if a project is a scam. The best way to do it is to actually join their community, because crypto projects, in order to be successful, they had to engage a wide audience. And if you see in the community that the people that all joined very recently and at the same time, that's a clear sign that these are bots, not actual people. I would actually go to their Twitter or their Discord server and start talking to random people there. And if they are not giving you an answer, or no one is replying, or everyone is replying like in a scripted, very mechanical way, you can also tell that they are probably bots, or they are people that are being paid to promote this for a short period of time. So I would say the two best metrics would be time length of the longevity of the project and community engagement.
Absolutely. I think having a community that's, as you say, mechanical or unwilling to acknowledge the downsides to a potential decision of the currency can be a clear indicator of a scam. One of the things we wanted to ask you was about how you see crypto fitting in or pairing with what would we think of as a traditional investment portfolio. Do you see the future as being a combination of the two? And do you have an idea of how they might work together?
Yeah. Well, I guess going back to my experience in South America, if I wanted to buy stocks in US companies, that would be very hard. And there are not many brokers in Bolivia and only cater like very, very wealthy individuals. So no one would like answer my calls, right? So one of the most interesting recent innovations of the crypto world is synthetic assets. And synthetic assets are basically crypto products that mirror the price action of a stock. So if I wanted to buy something, I don't know, Amazon stocks, I would not be able to buy traditional Amazon stocks because the stockbrokers in Bolivia would not work with me. But I could go to the crypto world, to something like Mirror Protocol or synthetics, and I could buy a synthetic asset that mirrors the price movements of that stock and include it in my portfolio and invest that way. So I would say actually maybe there won't be that type of combination you're mentioning. I think even the track record of how the crypto world is advancing, I think it's gonna overtake the traditional financial market, and you're gonna get different types of crypto assets all back in a decentralized network. Your choice is going to be how much risk you want to take. You want to speculate in this completely unstable asset that has, the shot of going 400x in a year, or you just want to buy some stocks on some traditional companies that they're going to give you, a good yield over time, but you're not going to be a millionaire overnight.
That makes a lot of sense. I actually wanted to ask you a question about you, if that's okay. I'm a person that's had a couple different, I would say, careers myself. The way that I kind of measure my success has changed. And I definitely see that cryptocurrency is really changing the way that people think about their work too. So I was wondering, how you sort of measure success for yourself at this point, both professionally and personally, and if that's kind of different or sort of one and the same.
Prior life path, my career path, I measure success in a very linear fashion, that I just getting the next promotion or getting to be in charge of the next big project in order to like stand out and move up. And, I was in my early 30s when like that sort of happened, the sudden career change, more propelled by the circumstances than by agency. And having to switch careers at kind of your 30s is always a difficult proposition, because when you are in this new industry, everyone's younger than you, and you will just see them thrive and go ahead of you, and you are there just trying to learn the basics. So I would say right now, how I measure success is how am I adapting to this new career path, how well I'm doing in relation to my current situation in the specific country, not so much in a career sense. And I would say that I'm being very happy, very pleased for the results, because I'm being able to get a very stable living. Actually, I've been able to make a better living than in my previous career path. And what I actually found is that now that I've worked fully remote, fully for crypto, I have more time. I don't have to commute to the work. I don't have to, sometimes you have to go on weekends because there's some crisis. I don't have that. And now I have more time for me, and that I can use that time to actually learn more about technology, like I said, I'm still doing the coding bootcamp in crypto projects. And I would say my measure of success would be how I'm being able to achieve more different things that would not directly advance my career, but that would give me more time to like just learn and not be so mercenary with my outlook of life.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's always interesting to see other people's perspective on their successes and how they measure themselves. And as you say, and as Nancy is agreeing, the challenges of switching career at any time can be difficult. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now, one question that we always like to ask at the end of our talks is very much a free form question. We like to ask basically, do you have any particular words of wisdom or best lessons that you've learned that you could share with us? And we want you to interpret that very freely in a way that makes most sense for you.
I would say always have a broad horizon, always try things that are outside of your comfort zone, and maybe they don't have any immediate use. In my example, when I was in my previous career path, I only thought of cryptocurrency as a hobby, and I kept up with them just because of personal interest. And when my situation suddenly changed and all things seemed to be falling apart, it was precisely this hobby or this pastime I had that gave me a new path to a new career and actually allowed me to thrive in a different way. And if I had been narrowly focused only on one thing, I would not have this maneuvering room in order to move to a different part of the economy without having to make too many sacrifices or have to wait too much time to do it. So I would say always have a broad horizon and always try to look things on the edge of your interest. Someday, one of those things may be your lifeline.
That's very well said. And I think, maybe adding to that, finding out what your, deepest areas of passion are. And I know we didn't hugely quiz you about, your kind of personal evolution in finding a path, but I know that there might be a deeper driving force behind everything you're doing in crypto. So I think I really appreciate you kind of hinting at that a little bit. Thank you so much, Sebastian. We really appreciate your thoughts and everything you've shared with us and taught us today. And thank you, everyone who joined us today, for listening and participating. We really appreciate you bringing your global perspective and energy to today's discussion. Spencer and I and the Founders Voyage team feel really fortunate to be part of this community with you and for the opportunity to bring you this cooperative learning experience. Thanks again, Sebastian, and everyone for joining. I hope you have a great day ahead.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you very much, Sebastian.
You've just finished another episode of Founders Voyage, the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. The team at Founders Voyage wants to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you enjoyed your time with us, and if so, please share this with someone else who might enjoy this podcast. You can also support us by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and by donating to our Patreon. Outro music today is Something for Nothing by Reverend Peyton's Big Damn Band.